Do I need to do this? Okay, good evening, everybody. Before we begin, you can see we've got a couple of raffles tonight. If y'all want to come grab your seats, we're going to kick it off real soon. A lot of you probably know we're raffling off a wonderful Polaris sled that was donated to us this year, and that's for anyone who lives in British Columbia. And then tonight, if you're here in person, there's a good chance you're going to win a raffle prize. We have a lot of great items this evening. Rosinal skis, Ayoko gloves, and Solomon goggles donated by Evo. We also have a Granite subscription, Whistler Blackcomb 5-day bike park pass, a Creekside Market gift certificate, and our grand prize is a Climb Avalanche bag, which is a pretty awesome prize. So if you're interested, there are QR codes everywhere, as well as up on the screen right now, and you'll be able to buy them through Intermission, and then we'll draw prizes at the end of the evening. So if you don't get it up on the QR code now, we will have those up around, you'll find them around Evo. Okay, that doesn't work. Did I have to start this again? Nope. Okay, well, while we figure out our technical difficulties, can I just press next on here? Nope, that doesn't work either. Okay, well, while we work out our technical difficulties, I'll share that I'm stoked for all of you guys who did come out tonight. It's been a challenging winter everywhere in the province, and it's awesome that there are still people who want to talk about snow. My name is Morgan Dinsdale, and I'm filling in tonight for a local organizer, and I also have the amazing pleasure of being the founder and executive director of State of the Snowpack. So if you have any questions about it, please come and chat with me about it. Maybe I'll just do the things that the slides say before we get into them. Yeah. Maybe Raj, we might have to steal you for technical support.
We're locked up again here for some reason.
Sorry, guys, we troubleshot this for a while and it was working fine.
What did you do last time? Get her onto that screen.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go off script and there'll be some slides. Oh, maybe we're clicking through now. Yes, awesome. It's happening. Thank you. It's working now? Awesome. Okay, so before we start this evening, land acknowledgement's always really important, just the first step. And we would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on traditional, ancestral, unceded homeland territory of the Lotwat and the Squamish Nation people. We're really privileged and grateful to be here and honor the ongoing presence of the Lotwat and Squamish nations on this land. And we're mindful, and I hope everyone here will be mindful of how we carry ourselves today, so as to demonstrate our intentions to honor this land, water, and all beings on it. This is our big disclaimer. So the information that I and all of our presenters this evening will present are our own observations to the best of our abilities. These presentations do not replace actual avalanche training. Sign up for an AST or a CAA course this winter or next season. They're awesome. And what you do with this information that we present is your responsibility, and please use it responsibly. So what is State of the Snowpack? Simply put, we're community conversations saving lives in the backcountry. For anyone new to State of the Snowpack, we're a nonprofit committed to making snowpack knowledge really accessible, approachable, and community-driven. These events aren't technical lectures, they're meant to be conversations. So please ask questions and know that this is just a place for community to gather. We deliver all of this knowledge through free community-based avalanche awareness events that are now held across Canadian mountain towns, from Terrace, BC, all the way to the Chickasha Mountains of Quebec. And each season our chapter network expands. So if you are from another community that would like to have that, please bring it to our attention, because we'd love to host it in more towns. A big thank you this year to our sponsors. They're really the people who help us grow. And so our big sponsors are Helicat Canada, Polaris, and Arc'teryx. We've also got Climb as a regional sponsor here. A huge shout out to Evo, that has been our incredible venue, as well as donating prizes and just going above and beyond. Whistler Heli-Ski, that I'm lucky to guide for, is also a chapter sponsor. And a big shout out tonight to Coast Mountain Brewing, who's providing beers and beverages for free to all those who are attending. So if you haven't gotten one, in the back corner over there, near where I think their coffee spot normally is, they've got drinks for you guys there. And then tonight's in-person raffle. I feel like almost every person here could have a good chance of walking out the door if they buy a raffle prize. So you've already seen there's a table of all the prizes up there, everything from a set of Rossi skis to a 5-day bike park pass, all the way to a Climb Abbey bag, which is a pretty rad prize. And if you want to learn more about us, just check out our website, which is stateofthesnowpack.com. And if you happen to be a university student or know someone who is a university student or a recent grad, we are hiring a grant writing and fundraising intern. Spread the word if you know someone or if you personally would be interested. And also this evening, we're really lucky to have members from both POW and Mountain Muskox here. So Protect Our Winters Canada brings a fresh, nonpartisan voice to the climate movement by uniting and mobilizing outdoor enthusiasts, athletes, and businesses. POW Canada leads the outdoor community to protect the places and experiences that we all love to ensure that we can have clean air, clean water, and a healthy planet. Their ambition is to become one of the most influential voices for climate in Canada, and joining POW is free. Is anyone here, by show of hands, already a member of POW or recently become a member of POW? Sweet. I have 2 hats to give away. So I think I saw you in the back there. You get a hat. And the second person to come up who said yes, you can have a hat too. Donated by POW this evening. And our member from POW, maybe if you can stand up, he's got a table back there this evening. And if you want to go talk to him at Intermission, find out more about POW's work, please go check them out. Thank you. And we also have Mountain Muskox here tonight. And Mountain Muskox Mentorship offers free and professionally facilitated circles of support for people who've been impacted by loss or trauma in the mountains. I can speak very highly of this organization. I've been attending circles for a while. It was originally founded in the Bow Valley, and they've grown to 4 chapters through Alberta and BC, and they launched a pilot here this winter in Whistler, and it's been so successful that they're going to have a permanent chapter here. It's all about providing community, healing, connection, and support. And if you're interested, there will be more meetings. And Olivia, she's somewhere too, if she could stand up right there. So she's right next to POW. So if you're interested in Mountain Muskox, please go chat with her at the intermission. Okay, so while you're all here, tonight's presenters. So we've got 3 great presenters this evening. Our Snowpack update will be from Bryce Anderson. He is a CAA Level 2 Pro member and an Avalanche educator. He's a 28-year resident of Whistler and Pemberton with a background in avalanche safety and mitigation work on mining, transportation, and recreational projects. Locally, he works as the lead avalanche forecast for Powder Mountain Snowmobile Club's grooming operations in the Brandywine. Bryce also instructs AST courses and industry training courses for the CAA and is a volunteer member of Whistler SAR. His varied professional background, combined with many years of skiing and snowmobiling in the sea to sky backcountry, gives him a very unique perspective on traveling safely through avalanche terrain in these mountains specifically. Then our guest speaker after our intermission, it will be from Chris Lawrence, who's an ACMG and IFMGA mountain guide, which is the highest level of guiding you can achieve as an IFMGA. He's also a CAA avalanche professional, and he's worked as an outdoor education instructor, a ski patroller, a snowcat ski guide, a heli ski guide, a ski touring guide, and an ice climbing guide, and a rock climbing guide. He's also a mountaineering guide and a film safety rigger. So this guy does everything. Chris has nourished his skills in the Strathcona Alps of Vancouver Island before graduating to multiple ascents of Mount Waddington, which is BC's highest peak. His experience ranges from ski touring in the Japanese and European Alps to alpine granite climbing in Argentina. Wow, I want to come on these trips. And he has called Squamish home for 27 years, where he's established himself as a mountain rescue training specialist. And he's going to share with us a series of lessons learned from the retrospective position that looks back on the experience of 4 decades dedicated to mountain life and guiding. And first, we're going to get a wonderful weather update from our favorite local meteorologist, David Jones, who you all know as the powder picker. I think he's our resident celebrity. So yeah, we're gonna, yeah, woo is right. Yeah, we're gonna get weather update, storms update, upcoming weather from David. We're gonna get current conditions in the snowpack, notable storms, Avalanche Canada updates from Bryce, and we're gonna get all sorts of lessons about risk mitigation, decision making in the mountains from Chris. And with that, no more need for me to speak. Let's have the powder picker do his thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Morgan. That's great. How are you guys doing tonight? Was today a good day on the hill? Yeah. Yeah. Best day in a while, I think. How many of you are local residents? Live here full time? Everyone's full time. How many of you are hardcore skiers? Yeah. And backcountry? Okay. Skiers, snowboarders, any snowboarders here? Yeah. How about men? Are there men here? Put your hand up if you're man. Okay. That's far enough. I'm going to talk about the weather since the last SOTS, which was on the January 13th, Tuesday, January 13th. And what I'm showing you right here is 2 weeks worth of weather. This is an animated GIF, so it's just rotating constantly. And that's okay in this case because it's repeating itself over and over and over again. And that was kind of what we experienced with the weather after the Pineapple Express came through. And I've highlighted in blue here the ridge line that, if you can see here, oops. Okay, that's finicky. In any case, if you can see British Columbia there, you can see it flipping back and forth. This is the 500 millibar heights, which is the mid-level of the atmosphere where the dynamics are most intense and where the weather is really driven from. And these are contour lines showing the heights and the highs and the low pressure systems. And I think it's obvious if you look at this for 30 seconds that we've had this great big ridge parked on the west coast for all of the 14 days here and across the west of the continent. You've got much lower heights here representing lower pressure. And you remember the Toronto storms, all the East Coast, Dallas, all those places getting very cold weather. Well, this was the pattern. So it's basically ridge on the west coast and low pressure over the interior of the continent, and very cold air feeding down over top of this ridge, giving all sorts of wonderful weather to the rest of the continent. So if you can just imagine this being averaged out, these represent heights. We call these heights. So the heights are lower in the low and higher in the high, likewise lower in the low and higher in the high. So it's like a contour map of elevation that most people are familiar with, only this is a constant pressure surface at 500 millibars. So it's following and telling you what the elevation, in a sense, of that 500 millibar height is in the atmosphere. And if you imagined that you took a couple of points over here, say, and here, and a couple of points down here, and did the same thing over here, 4 different points, and looked at that over thousands and thousands of days, you would start to get some patterns forming, and weather forecasting is all about pattern recognition. So in this particular case, for the 2-week period, you're probably going to get a pattern of much higher heights on the left, on the west coast, and much lower heights over the interior of the continent. Oh. Okay, looks like we are having trouble here. This is not good. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. Is that an option? Sure. Here, we go next. Okay. Next. Yeah, we're good. Sorry. What am I doing? Is that what you want next? Sure. Okay, we skipped through a couple things there, but how many of you have heard of the Pacific North America pattern? Nobody? Oh, okay, good. Okay, so if you imagined on those last maps taking an average over here, you had something that would resemble a high, and an average over here, you'd have something that resembles a low. Well, it turns out we suffered through 2 weeks of the positive phase of something called the Pacific North America pattern. And this particular pattern has 2 phases because they're simply measuring the air pressure in the north and the south over large distances and creating an index out of that that's either positive or negative. In this case, this is described as the warm or positive phase of the Pacific North America. So that's what, that's sort of a summary of 2 weeks worth of weather right there. And we suffered because all of the storms were deflected over the top. They picked up cold air and were delivered to the rest of North America. Okay, so here's a more favorable pattern, which we could also get stuck in and have. These things operate on a sub-seasonal scale from weeks to months, let's say. So they can't be predicted ahead of a season. And there are attempts to forecast the phases of the PNA to give us some kind of hint about maybe what the next 2 weeks will be like, but I'll get to that in a second. So here's a more skier-friendly pattern, and this is known as the negative phase of the Pacific North America pattern, where that ridge of high pressure over the coast that was locked in backs up over the Pacific, and that opens the door for storms to come at us from the northern Gulf of Alaska, much colder flow down the coast, likely to pick up moisture as they come across the Gulf of Alaska and down onto the west coast. So this is the opposite and far more conducive to good skiing. This is just to show you the index flipping and back and forth. This is from the year 2000 to 2025, and the positive phase above the line in red or orange, and the negative phase in a purpley blue. So it flips back and forth like a lot of these indices. It's really just measuring pressure differentials across a broad area of the world. And there are some attempts being made to forecast this. Now, it's interesting that we all heard about La Nina winter that was coming. How many of you thought it was going to be a great ski season this year? Yeah. So as it turns out, and I never get tired of saying this, I mean, the weather is complicated and you can never reduce it to one simple factor here. And it turns out that during La Nina, the negative or cold phase, the skiers flow type phase, is much more frequent during La Nina winters. So this particular winter has been a bit of a burden, and it's operating perhaps in a different way than we might expect. If we were told at the beginning of the season, we're likely to get more negative phases of the Pacific North America pattern, and that's going to be good for skiing. So the weather's always complicated and does the opposite of what you think it's going to do. So in terms of forecast, this right here is a look at the PNA index, and it goes from the 15th of October to right up to this morning. This is done on a daily basis. And so you can see the red dashed line, that's 0 on the index. So the positive phase is above, the negative phase is below. And this starts in October. And if you look at around the middle part of December, that's actually about December 20th. That was when the negative phase kicked in and Christmas was saved here. If we hadn't had that, can you imagine what kind of season this would be? So that gives you an idea of how this index is correlated to, I mean, it's a consequence of the pressure pattern, really, okay? And so you can see what happened since then. And over the last 2 weeks, we've been in this very positive phase of it, leading right up to the 1st of February. So remember, we had the warm storms, increasingly warm storms coming in, and then finally the big one that really whacked us. But these particular storms in here were high freezing level, which we've seen a lot of this year. And you can see out here what's happening. So this is actually a prediction. From this point on, this is a prediction using an ensemble forecast technique. That's multiple runs of the same model. And the mean or the average of the model is the black dashed line. And the storm that just went through kind of marked a transition to a cooler regime that's going to stick around a while, according to the mean, at least, of the models. So this is the attempt to recognize the pattern and make predictions. But you have to keep in mind that they're very broad scale predictions. I mean, it's really a prediction about pressure differentials and those being correlated to longer term weather patterns, at least week to monthly type patterns, okay? So if you're interested in any of this, the daily forecast can be found at this website, but it's way easier just to type in NOAA teleconnections. NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the United States that runs the weather service. So if you want to follow that, I think I'm going to start looking at it because this has been quite interesting. Your average forecaster is not too interested in the Pacific North America pattern because it's so far out and it's so non-specific. We're more inclined to be concerned about shorter terms and more specific weather. And of course, all of these predictions are being, made from the same suite of models that we're looking at anyway. So we can generate a similar story about the long term. And I just threw this up here to give you an idea. This is the global forecast off of spot weather for Blackcomb Peak. And in purple up top is the 1,500 meter freezing level. It's actually the 850 millibar freezing level, but that's about 1,500 meters. And the red dashed line is the zero isotherm. So this is going out to February 19th. It's a 9 or 10 day forecast. And you can see at 1,500 meters anyway, where we're guaranteed snow at Pig Alley, we're in much colder air than we have been, according to this particular single model run. And this meshes with the PNA forecast of going into this colder negative phase. Now, I'm getting really challenged to talk about the weather in a positive way because it's been almost a month, well, basically a month of not too much of excitement to talk about. And this is the next 10-day forecast. I added in the snowfall forecast or the precipitation forecast. So although we have the air temperatures to provide good powder snow, as people saw today, it doesn't take much often. This is the 10-day outlook, and it looks pretty grim. So there's no storms being picked up by the Canadian global model in the 10-day period. And if you use spot weather, there's actually now a European model that goes out 15 days, and it's not looking much more encouraging either. It's got the cold air, but we're just not in the storm track. So this is another good example of, okay, we're going into this negative phase. Great. It's more complicated than that because we don't have the moisture. So I would caution anyone to try and predict what a season is going to be. Meteorologists who've been around for a while don't even bother. And I tell people there's nothing I can tell you that's going to describe the season in any way. I mean, think about this particular season. So slow to start. Then that great change prior to Christmas, then the Pineapple Express, and then the dryness and drought since then that looks like it may go on for at least another 10 days, perhaps even 2 weeks. I'm going to leave it at that, and we can, in the March session, look back and see how we did. And I hope we're not sitting in the same position now where there hasn't been much in the way of storms. So have you guys got any questions about this or anything else to do with the weather?
How's your app going?
Sorry?
Last time we did it, I thought you said you were making an app or a website or...
Oh, yes. Yeah. So me and my two partners who are in the room here tonight are working away, beavering away on an app. And yeah, it's coming along. These things are quite challenging, so we're still at it. Looks like it won't come out this year, so it's going to have to be for next season at this point. That was a question about the app that we're working on. Go ahead.
Has NOAA's work been compromised or damaged by the Trump administration?
Okay, so the question was, has NOAA's work been damaged or compromised by the Trump administration? I'm guessing it has, but I have not been following that story. I've heard people from, from colleagues that are still working for the Weather Service that their American colleagues are a bit flummoxed right now. And there was another question.
I was just thinking maybe, do you think your numbers would be closer to double if you were centered on Whistler?
Is that a serious question? Yeah. This is for Blackcomb Peak, supposedly. Yeah. Of course, its elevation, you can see there is 1,503 meters. So the model terrain doesn't ever match the real terrain. So, right. Okay. Yes.
What are the chances that's wrong?
Okay. What are the chances that's wrong? Well, in general, I would say, looking at this, having looked at it for a few days, at least the first week of this is going to be spot on, I think, in terms of the general dryness to the pattern. After that, we can hope for something to throw a wrinkle into the model consensus. Any other questions? No? Okay, I'll pass it back to Morgan then. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm not going to say much. I'm just going to invite Bryce up to the stage to talk about the snowpack and lots of other goodies he has for us.
Thank you. I know David says you can't predict this far in advance, but I'm calling it now. March is going to be epic. We've got to hope. Yeah, I like following up David because he's an excellent presenter and everybody knows him. And right now, probably the state of the weather might be a more interesting topic than the state of the snowpack. But I'll do my best. He was asking about skiers and snowboarders. He didn't ask about snowmobilers. I know there's at least a couple of sledders here. Show of hands, who sleds? Yeah, kind of typical. Definitely a pretty solid minority. Maybe there's some at home watching this. That's kind of typical. Before I dive into kind of our season and our snowpack, I thought I'd just share a little bit about what I do for work, which is industrial avalanche forecasting, which is somewhat of a niche sector in the avalanche industry. A few years ago, I worked up in the Amanikas, and that's where this photo is taken from. Pretty cool mountain range, super remote, kind of north central BC. Doing work up there for a mine. It's that same area. We had a couple sleds to get around on, which is always nice for travel. And because it's so remote, we had some pretty interesting interactions with wildlife up there as well. See definitely more lynx than we do people, which is awesome. And so this just give you a bit of an idea of where it is, because not a lot of people are probably aware of the Amanikas. That's where the mine is. And then that waypoint just south of the mine is kind of our main avalanche zones. We had 2 or 3 other zones that we were kind of responsible for as well. The closest town to that is the town of Mackenzie, which is a 6-hour drive south. So it's out there. And this is what we're responsible for keeping safe, is that road down there, kind of left side of the photo there. So we've got 45 paths over a stretch of 11 kilometers of road. They're all large paths. Most of those paths have to go at least size 3 before we're worried about them hitting the road. We have a handful of kind of more direct ones, maybe size 2.5 might affect the road. So it's a little bit of a different element at risk. So we're just worried about trucks and road maintenance contractors down on that road. It's very different than what ski resorts and ski guides have to manage in their terrain, because they've got skiers absolutely everywhere. So they're worried about anything bigger than a size 1, really. Yeah, so the Yamanicas themselves, it's a dry climate, very cold, typically. So we deal with a lot of this, a lot of facets and depth for. Another kind of main driver of snowpack development is the wind. We deal with a ton of wind up there. There's another look at some of our terrain. So you can see those paths, they get quite loaded. So cross-loading is kind of the name of the game up there. And you can see the ridges between those paths are pretty much scoured down to rock, more or less. And that's pretty typical for up there. So what do we use for mitigation? Explosives, of course. So heli deployment, a little bit different than the ski resorts, because we're pretty much, at least the operations I'm working on, we're pretty much exclusively using 25 kilogram charges because they're big paths and we don't control them very often. You know, depending on conditions, once a month, maybe twice a month, because again, we're only worried about big avalanches affecting that road location. So there's, you know, shots just gone off, and this is just kind of, I threw this in here because it really illustrates kind of that cross-loading pattern. That's not a very typical fracture line there. That's probably 250 meters wide maybe, but more vertical than horizontal. So that just kind of illustrates our loading patterns there. And even though it is a thin snowpack, we still get big avalanches. This is sort of our largest path. That's a size 4. That avalanche ran 1.6 kilometers, buried about 220 meters of road under 2 to 3 meters of debris. And just to kind of give that debris a bit of scale, kind of the left side of the photo there, you can see one of the mine workers on part of the debris. That's probably about 2/3 of the deposit. Another third of it's kind of out of view of that photo. And that crown up above, that was over 2 meters deep and over 1 kilometer away. And then I threw this in here. I was actually back up at that operation 17th of January. I went up there and just kind of a rock star one-day bombing mission, and we got some really good results. The reason I threw this in there, this is quite interesting, you know, going back to David's presentation about that big high-pressure ridge that we had there in middle of January. That day, I was chucking bombs at a helicopter without gloves on. It was 4 degrees. And that's extremely, I mean, I don't have weather data for up there, but that would be extremely rare. More typical temperatures up there at that time of year would be like -15, -20. And +4 is pretty bizarre. So yeah, now in the springs, I work up north in the North Coast Mountains, north of Stewart. So basically the bottom of the Alaska Panhandle, but on the Canadian side. Obviously large mountains, big features up there. That is the Treaty Glacier, and that particular point of the glacier, that's 1 kilometer wide. And that big face on the to the right of center, that's 1 kilometer wide, 800 meters vertical. And you can see the drill platforms and the drills on the glacier down below. So that's some of the terrain that we got to manage up there. And one of our camps, obviously. Pretty cool area, again, pretty darn remote, super glaciated. Some springs, we manage a 25-kilometer road over the ice cap from a nearby mine to our operation to bring in supplies. That's the snowcat putting in that road over the terrain. And pretty much the opposite snowpack of what we have in the Yamanicas. We get a lot of snow up there. It's a long season. And we're typically dealing with different avalanche problem types there than we're dealing with the Yamanicas. And that's our element at risk there. So the drill rigs. So those drills are manned 24/7. Crew of 2 people on each of those drill rigs. And sometimes they put them in pretty interesting locations like that, which is kind of fun to manage. Another element at risk is equipment operators. They get themselves in some pretty interesting positions as well. So we get to manage that. And the same mitigation. You know, explosives is one. The other mitigation is just removing drill rigs and equipment from the terrain, just getting them back out of there. The unfortunate thing with the drill rigs is they take about a day and a half to move. So yeah, we have to, if we start getting nervous, then we got to give them lots of notice to get the drill rigs out of the way. Blasting, of course, is one of the funner parts of the job, especially when you get results like that. So that's up in Treaty Creek area. And because of the depth of the snowpack and because of the northern climate, it's a really late season. This was taken June 20th of last year. That was a size 4 wet slab, or probably more accurately a deep persistent slab. A couple of days after this, so actually the second day of summer, we did a bombing mission. We were getting size 4s, and these avalanches were running on a layer that formed in December. So it's a pretty lengthy avalanche season. And then outside of avalanche hazards, we get to manage glacier hazards as well, and sometimes equipment find crevasses. Luckily, that was just relatively small crevasse for up there. But closer to home, so this is my 5th season forecasting for the grooming operations for Powder Mountain Snowmobile Club in the Brandywine area. So that's Mount Fee to the left, that's Chocolate Bowl to the right. And then down kind of below in that bottom of that valley below those trees is an area called Avalanche Alley. It's pretty aptly named. So we started the program in the winter, I guess it was 21-22. We got approached by Powder Mountain Snowmobile Club to start an avalanche safety program for their grooming operations. And this was my 2nd field day ever working for Powder Mountain Snowmobile Club. This is Avalanche Alley. So kind of through the trees there, the notch in the trees there is where the road comes out of the trees. So that's where the access road to Chocolate Bowl comes through. This was a rain event that triggered a persistent slab problem. That's my assistant. He's 6 feet tall. The wall to the right there is probably 20 feet. And it was a pretty impressive event. And it's always nice when you start at a new program to see right away what the terrain's capable of producing. So obviously, it makes sense that an avalanche safety program was required. So that winter, we put together an avalanche safety plan, an emergency response plan, and started putting together an avalanche path locator map, which is what you see here. So they're currently maintain about 30 kilometers of road. Some of those sections of road are maintained more frequently than others. And we've got 35 named paths that affect those roads. We also established a snow study plot, nice modest one. It's not fancy like Catskinner on Blackcomb or Pig Alley on Whistler. We don't have telemetry and all the fancy doodads, but this does give us pretty valuable information. And the snowcat operators help us by getting readings in the nights when they're up there. So this is what a typical advisory looks like that we put out to the Snowmobile Club and to the group snowcat operators. This was actually right around, I guess, the night before the last State of the Snowpack presentation. So during that big rain event, January 12th, it's not very often we go up to high, but we were high for that one because we had a lot of storm snow and then major warm up with, well, that was a lot of rain. That was, I think, 150 millimeters of precipitation at Pig Alley, something like that. About 100 of it came in the form of rain. So we put out a 3-day forecast, 3 days a week, so it covers them for the week. And then these are our, similar to the public avalanche hazard danger ratings is 5-level scale. However, these are written specifically for the roads, for work on the roads, and they don't apply to any, kind of travel off the road. So this is strictly for kind of their grooming operations or volunteers that might be traveling on the roads on their snowmobiles. And I wanted to highlight a little bit about the work that's being done by Powder Mountain Snowmobile Club. Steve Orange, the president, he's here tonight, hobbling around. Because they deserve some credit. They're doing some really great things at the Snowmobile Club. So the club started in 1990, and they've come a long way since then. They got a small crew of skilled snowcat operators that are responsible for not only building the roads, but obviously maintaining them, helping us out with weather observations, like I said. They've done a fantastic job maintaining the lower elevation roads this year. It's unbelievable that they've been able to hang on to the roads and keep it going, considering the temperatures that we've been having. I mean, some of the inversions have helped out a little bit, but it's definitely been a challenging season. They've been doing a great job. They've got a lot of great resources. They started bringing in some technology into the operation. So they have GPS trackers on the cats that automatically uploads to this part of their website. So it tracks what's been groomed and when, how long ago things were groomed, which is great for club members and other riders to know kind of road status. They got a series of 6 webcams set up all over their tenure. They also provide, so you can see conditions through the cameras, obviously. They also provide temperatures, which is nice. And you can even go back on their website and farm some data like this, some temperatures at certain locations. So this is leading up to you can see the trend leading up to that warm up of January 11th, 12th. And that spike on the left is probably just some sun directly hitting the sensor. These aren't like super scientific instruments. So that was probably just a bit of sun over a couple hours hitting that thermometer sensor. They've also provided, so they've started using this black line safety. So it's a lone worker monitor, basically. There's pretty good cell coverage in the Brandywine area, but this is just another level of safety that I've added in for their snowcat operators who are working out there pretty much in the middle of nowhere by themselves. Another great thing the club has done over the last several years is they've got an amazing system of rescue caches all over the place. So kind of bottom left, this picture also gives you an idea of where the Brandywine zone is in relative to relation to Whistler, if you're not sure. Bottom left there, we can see we've got the roads and the paths mapped out. There's 3 rescue caches in kind of the 3 main zones, which is Chocolate Bowl, Brandywine Bowl, and Metal Dome. But then in the further reaches of the backcountry, they got, they continue. They got one at Grizzly Lake, one at Banner Pass. They got one way out past Callahan Mountain, and then they built a rescue shelter by Ring Mountain. So these are what their rescue caches look like. This is the furthest out one. That's Callahan Mountain in the background there. And they've got these stocked with first aid supplies, things like blankets, all your typical first aid kit stuff, patient packaging stuff like splints, spine boards. They've got subject transportation stuff like toboggans in there. So they're really well stocked. They do a good job maintaining them. And they also, Gavin Christie, who is the safety director of Powder Mountain Snowmobile Club. He's also one of the managers on Whistler Search and Rescue. Every 2 weeks, he runs a safety cache orientation / training session for members so they can go out and not only learn where the caches are, but also what's in them and how to use what's in them. And there's been really good feedback about those sessions. This is the rescue shelter by Ring Mountain. Nothing too fancy, but that could certainly come in handy if you're out there, get weathered out, have a mechanical, because it's pretty far out there. So they've got a great safety system out in the backcountry. I also want to give them props. They are really great Whistler SAR supporters. Every year they collect donations through their website when people sign up for their passes, and the club itself matches all those donations, and they cut a nice check for a few $1,000s to Whistler Search and Rescue every year. And they've been doing that for years. They also have a great lineup of events every year. So this coming weekend, we've got an AST1 plus course that's running Saturday and Sunday. It's myself that's instructing it. There's 1 space remaining if anyone's interested. And I must say that the Brandywine area is a fantastic venue for instructing AST courses. There's so much great terrain to look at. There's an amazing road network to travel around on. You don't even need advanced snowmobile skills. If you can ride a road on a snowmobile, you can take one of these courses. Yeah, it's just really quick to get around on snowmobiles. It gives us extra time to practice companion rescue skills and safe travel techniques and all that. Also, this coming weekend on Sunday, they've got a family day social barbecue. They've even got it set up for people that don't ride or don't have their own snowmobiles. They've got side-by-sides with tracks that'll take people up to Brandywine Bowl where the festivities are happening. They're gonna have a barbecue and lots of fun events and things for the kids to do. You can see there's a couple of those safety cache sessions I was talking about coming up. And on the 21st is the annual Ladies Ride Day. That photo there is from last year's Ladies Ride Day. And it looks like they had an amazing turnout. They had a great day and it looks like everybody's having a good time. And lastly, for those skiers and snowboarders out there, they've done a great job catering to skiers and snowboarders. They've got a couple zones specifically set up for skiers and snowboarders, one in Metal Dome, one in Brandywine Bowl, where they specifically groom roads for a drop-off location and a pickup location, so people can ski some pretty fun terrain without having to do technical tandeming. You can just sit on a road and go up and down and do some skiing. Okay, David's already touched on this quite a bit, so I'll run through this pretty quickly. And I apologize if any of the content is upsetting for people. This, by the way, this is the view of Kaylee and Pyroclastic from the top of Chocolate Bowl in the Brandywine zone. That was taken during the good times there around Christmas break. Like David's already touched on, so early season, it's pretty wet fall. I mean, if I could only describe the whole season with 2 words so far, it would probably be warm and wet. It was a really wet fall. Freezing levels stayed stubbornly high for the most part. I know on the resort, snowmaking operations were definitely challenged. I don't ever recall having to take a bus from the upper lots to the Blackcomb Day Lodge because you couldn't ski down to the bottom accelerator chair. That was new to me. So yeah, it was definitely lots of precip, but just high freezing levels, staying stubbornly high. And sadly, Pemberton Valley pretty much looks the exact same right now, midwinter, except there's a little more avalanche debris in those bottom of those paths. Then yeah, December 15 came along. Anybody remember this day? I do. It was the second day of a operations level 1 course I was instructing in Whistler, and far from ideal conditions for an avalanche course. 70 mils of rain that day, pretty much to the top of the mountain, with some pretty impressive winds. There was a period of sustained 150 km/h winds at the peak, with gusts that were likely over 180 km/h. The instruments only really read to 180. I'd like to thank Dave Sears for this photo, by the way. He's one of the classic OG Whistler ski bums. He has a great collection of photos from back in the day. And the other comforting thing about this photo is that this isn't the first time Whistler's dealt with this weather. 1977, apparently they had a bit of a run as well. But then the good times came along. The precip kept coming, temperatures gradually lowered, and hopefully you guys got to enjoy some of this, or for most of you, maybe it looked more like this. We had a pretty good run there for, I don't know, about 2.5 weeks. Then January 11, through the middle of a storm, freezing level spiked. David already touched on that. I believe at Pig Alley, so January 12, back to this, it was something like 150 millimeters of precipitation over the 11th and 12th, and about 100 of that came in the form of rain. So it was a soaker. So that was right around the time of the last State of the Snowpack presentation that happened on the 13th. So the 14th is the day after we went out in the Brandywine zone. This is Brandywine itself. And there's a pretty good cycle, pretty large, wet loose, and wet slab avalanche cycle. As expected, really. As far as the road network in Brandywine went, 5 different locations got buried by avalanche debris. About 1 kilometer of road in total. So this is Upper Brandywine Bowl. You can't tell where the road is because it got buried by all that snow and by rain and avalanche debris, but the road pretty much goes up to the end of that lower part of the bowl there, kind of into the avalanche debris. This is kind of, see where that big rock is typically where the road, turnaround in the road is. About 200 meters of road there, got buried. Size 3 wet slab came out of kind of top center there, and another 2.5 came down from another area called the Gauntlet. And this is Avalanche Alley, about 550 meters of road there, or road location, I should say. The road wasn't built yet because we didn't have enough snow to build it over the creek. And then kind of in the upper part of Chocolate Bowl, there's another 200 meters of road location that got hit by avalanches. So 9 days later, we're well into our drought that David was talking about. We got the road pushed through Avalanche Alley, through all that debris. And then this kind of sums up that 2-week drought. Rain runnels and crust. Not exactly ideal backcountry travel conditions. The groomers on Whistler Blackcomb were running pretty nice though if you have skinny skis. So it was pretty mild temperatures over that 2 weeks, largely inverted. And despite the temperatures being mild, through a process at night with the clear nights called radiative cooling, we still had a pretty robust crust form. And that drought stuck along for so long that we actually had faceting happening as well. So the upper snowpack started to turn a bit sugary, which kind of gave some concern for the next snowfall. Luckily, the next snowfall came in like snot, super, it was warm and wet. So another warm wet stretch, high freezing levels, 28th to the 3rd. I took this photo on January 31. That was when the freezing levels spiked to about 2,200 meters. It was a pretty wet day, super poor visibility. But it was interesting. As Brandywine's a pretty wet spot, gets a lot of precipitation. That day, where this photo was taken from, about 1,300 meters, there was 20 centimeters of snow over the crust. We traveled up kind of out of sight of where the road is there in the center of the photo, up to 1,500 meters, there was 60 centimeters. And then we managed to travel up through the whiteout and get to the upper part of the bowl to 1,700 meters, and there was 160 centimeters of snow over the crust. So the freezing level, I mean, up high, there's a lot of snow. It's kind of the theme for this year. Lots of snow up high, not so much down low. And then it cleared up again, and we had super high freezing levels again, over 3,000 meters. But again, with that radiative cooling process, we had another crust set up. And in the Brandywine zone, we had rain runnels again up to 2,000 meters. Again, not exactly ideal for backcountry travel, whether you're on a sled or skis. But recently, I should actually go back. So I took this photo February 5th. That's pretty wild. February 5th is about as midwinter as you can get. And the max temperature at the Roundhouse that day was 11.5, and the peak of Whistler was 9.4. That's pretty wild. The other shocking thing, and the main reason I took this photo is this is my 29th winter here. I don't ever recall Green Lake being open like that in the middle of winter. I don't have data to back that up, but at the very least, it's highly unusual. If I showed that photo to anyone and asked you the time of year without knowing this season, there's no way you'd guess February 5. That looks more like May. But then just this past weekend, we had a good shot of snow on Saturday. Again, pretty high freezing levels. They've been kind of stubbornly high. But this is on the Appa Glacier. That's probably about 1,800 meters there. There was 35 centimeters of snow over the crust. We had a pretty good day that day. We had good riding. We had some fun PAL surfing. You got below 1,600 meters, the snow disappeared pretty quickly. And if you got above 2,100 meters, it was pretty wind affected. But there's a nice window there between 60 and 2,100 meters where we had a pretty good day. I put this together. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because David's already kind of gone over. This is just a slightly different thing, and it doesn't paint the whole entire picture of the season because this is the maximum daily temperature at the Roundhouse, and the dash line is the height of snow at Pig Alley on Whistler. It doesn't tell the whole story because I don't have the min temperatures on there. I wanted to keep the graph pretty simple. It doesn't really show, those rain events, the precipitation on the rain events. But it is kind of amazing to see how much the temperatures have been above freezing at the Roundhouse. I mean, that's pretty high up there. That's 1,835 meters. And it's been pretty consistent getting above freezing at the Roundhouse this year. You can see kind of the good times if this is going to work. So right around here, you can see the temperatures dipped, HS grew, so we had good snow there. That's all over Christmas break. We had one quick spike in temperature there around the new year. Then the temperatures dipped again. We got a whole bunch of snow. And then right there where that HS peak takes a dive is where we had that last rain event on January 12th. 100 mils of rain, shrank our snowpack down. But as David mentioned, now our temperatures are starting to look a little more normal, a little more reasonable. And if you go to the right aspect and elevation right now, there's pretty good conditions out there. Okay, current state of the snowpack, some layers. There's a whole bunch of layers and there's a bit of a theme there. Crust, 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 and crust. Welcome to the coast. Luckily, most of these layers haven't really translated into becoming problematic or persistent layers. Maybe with the exception of the mid-November one, that was active for about a week in early to mid-December. The December 16 crust was followed by that warm snow. We had good bonding with that. There's a little bit of concern with this January 2 layer, Graupo, surface core, and crust. That didn't really seem to become a problem, maybe in some isolated spots. There's definitely some concern before the snowfall came with that January 28, crust facet combo. I don't think the forecasters around here are ready to quite write that one off yet, but it does appear that the bonding to it is reasonable at this point, and it's starting to get bridged over as well. So kind of a pretty solid snowpack above it. And then our most recent one is from this past weekend, February 7. I don't think that one's going to become problematic either. It's a bit too early to tell, but those are our layers. Crusts. This is from last week, chocolate bowl. I won't dive into this too much, but the general theme there is the crust. So this symbol here, if you're not familiar, the one that looks like a bike chain link, that's a crust. And there's a whole bunch of them there. Some of those crusts are pretty thick. You can see the one's almost 40 centimeters thick. That's the January 28 crust. It doesn't show it on this graph, but there is some softer layers within that crust. It's what we call a complex, where it got faceted out. I was getting some results on those facets, but they were non-planar. And typically non-planar results don't really translate into avalanche activity. I have down there at the bottom, so this is a deep snowpack area where we dug that profile. It was over 450 centimeters deep. We never did hit the bottom with our probe. I have it in there generally well settled. And what I mean by that is these are pretty dense, subtle layers. For those who aren't familiar, so P stands for pencil. That means that layer of snow is dense, is too dense to really put your finger in easily, but you can stick a pencil through it. And that's generally considered, well settled. And in the long term, this generally translates into good stability. This is another one. This is from Sunday. So thank you to Dominic Ballifer and Black Hole Patrol for sharing this with me. Same sort of thing, lots of crusts. The crusts are thinner there, obviously, because it's over 300 meters higher, so it's higher elevation, so colder temperatures. But also, it's an area that doesn't receive as much precipitation as Chocolate Bowl. But same sort of idea, pencil hard snow at the bottom there with a series of crusts, and then one finger snow with the more recent snowfall on top. And looking at that, there's no real major red flags unless there's some facets hiding in there around the January 28 crust. I just wanted to touch on this before I'm going to kind of go into the Avalanche Canada forecast next. This got talked about at the last presentation as well, just talking about that whole spatial variability thing. And I don't envy the Avalanche Canada forecasters for the work that they have, because they are forecasting for a massive region. That region highlighted there. Compared to the work that I do, we're just forecasting for a really small area. But within that big region, you can see the three weather plots there are pretty close together. There's a pretty drastic difference in snowfall. So this was taken January 30, right before things really spiked up and got warm with that last snowfall event. So HN24, that's the snowfall received over the last 24 hours. HST, so that's the storm snow total, so that's since the storm began. And HS is just the total height of snow sitting on the ground. And just to highlight the HS there, so Brandywine, and they're all these, I should point out, all these weather plots are similar elevation. So in Brandywine, we're sitting at just shy of 3 meters, at Whistler, 2 meters, and at Blackcomb, 1 meter. And that's a pretty small area of that entire big zone that they're forecasting. So I just wanted to, I think that just kind of illustrates how different snowpacks can be sometimes within these large areas that they're forecasting for. So here we go. This is this is today's forecast. Put it at 4 o'clock. So tomorrow, 221, moderate, low. So alpine, tree line, and below tree line. And then both Thursday and Friday, 211. Nothing too flashy or sexy there, which is nice. They've got 2 avalanche problems currently listed right now. So wind slab, they've got in the alpine and tree line on northerly aspects, because most of our wind, or all of our wind lately, has been coming from the south, which is pretty typical for us. Likelihood they have that possible, and then expected size 1 to 2. And then their comments in there, wind slabs likely to remain ride or triggerable on north and east aspects. And also recent storm wind means that wind slabs could be found further down the slope than expected. And we were definitely seeing that on Sunday out on the Pemberton ice cap. Up high, it was definitely wind blasted. You wanted to be a little bit lower down. They also have wet loose. So all elevations, southerly aspects, obviously, is worried about the sun coming out. This time of year, the sun is just starting to pack a little more punch, especially on steeper slopes. Days are getting a bit longer. They've got a possible likely, obviously the likelihood's going to be higher in the afternoons than the mornings. And they got a size 1 to 1.5. And they're talking about, yeah, steep sun exposed slopes. I think today on Blackcomb, if I'm not mistaken, I think they closed down lakeside bowl due to avalanche concern with kind of steep south-facing Blackcomb Peak warming up with the rocks, and they probably had some wet loose activity happening. Anybody out there today see it? Do you see some wet loose activity on Blackcomb Peak? No, just saw the closure. Oh, they were? Okay, shut her down and put some shots up there. Good times. Terrain and travel advice. Watch for newly formed reactive wind slabs as you transition to wind-affected terrain. That's not where the best skiing is going to be either. So if you avoid that, you're going to avoid the wind slab hazard and you can get better skiing and riding. Watch for potential loose avalanches and steep terrain. I noticed here that they didn't specify wet or dry. They're actually, yesterday on the Infolex operations, we're talking about loose dry problem on steep north slopes. But it also goes for, obviously, wet loose avalanches on steep souths. But on steep norths, there's probably potential for some dry loose, you know, which typically aren't very destructive, but if you're in gnarly terrain, they can be a problem. This kind of goes without saying, be alert to conditions that change the elevation aspect and exposure to wind. There's a lot of variability out there right now with the wind and the temperatures we've had. I don't imagine there's a lot of great skiing below tree line right now. Lower tree line's probably a little bit suspect. And as always, give cornices the respect they deserve. So I'm gonna kind of go look at a couple avalanche observations here in a minute, but so they're saying over the past couple of days, natural, rider, and explosive triggered avalanches. So yeah, naturals, skiers and riders, and explosive triggered to size 2, primarily in lee wind affected terrain features at tree line and above. So 30 to 50 centimeters of recent snow. I would think that would be at least 1,600 meters and higher to get those kind of snowfall totals. Below that, it thins out real quick. Sits over the crust facet layer formed earlier this month. So that's kind of the January 28 layer, I believe they're referring to there. Deeper deposits down in north and east aspects. And the crust may be exposed beyond the surface and exposed ridges due to strong southerly winds. For sure, probably blasted down to the crust in certain areas. Snow surface is expected to become moist on sun-exposed slopes during the day. I'm guessing that happened today. I wasn't out today. I'm guessing on some slopes it heated up, and there might already be a bit of a crust formed on some steep south slopes. Widespread crust and facet layer from late January is buried to 40 centimeters, so that's a January 28 one. Mid and lower snowpack is settled and strong, and we can kind of see that in those two profiles that we looked at. So tonight, kind of what Dave was talking about, some cooler temperatures, not much in the way of precip. Summarize that. Good to see those temperatures though, below freezing at tree line. 5 centimeters on Friday possible, and that's exactly what David was showing. And right now they got their confidence at moderate. There's some uncertainty due to the variability of wind. Some notable avalanche events. Did anybody see this min report? This is from Sunday. I found this one interesting. Said there's a size 2 in Isumi. Anybody know anything about that? Hear of that? See it? So this person described a snowboarder triggered size 2 on Isumi, which is on Phalanx, Blackcomb backcountry. It says 20 centimeters deep, 50 meters wide, ran near full path, 400 meters, question mark. Yeah, I don't really have any information on this other than what was put in the min report. I will point out, though, that there's definitely some inconsistencies between the description and some of the information that was put over here, like wet slab, natural. I'm guessing he just picked the wrong day on the calendar because it says from December 29. So I'm not sure about that one. I took this photo on Sunday. This is up on the Pemberton ice cap. This is the only avalanche we saw that day, and we saw a fair bit of terrain. Steep, wind-loaded, unsupported slope, natural avalanche, size 2, ran about 250 meters just because it's a big feature. That was all we say that day. On the Infolex on Sunday, one operation actually reported isolated size 3s. I followed up on that and tried to get some more information, but didn't get anything back. Whistler Blackcomb. There's definitely a bit of a natural cycle from Saturday's storm. Not major, but operations were definitely seeing naturals up to size 2 kind of here and there. And Whistler Blackcomb got numerous results up to size 2, storm slab and cornice. I kind of just showed you guys a min report. Always encourage people to share their information through these min reports. They're super helpful, not only for the Avalanche Canada forecasters. I look at them as well. Unfortunately, we don't get a ton of min reports in the Brandywine area from the snowmobile crowd, but when I do get them, they're super helpful. Any information is good information. I would encourage you to try to be as accurate as possible. And photos are awesome. Photos say 1,000 words, so upload photos with them. Anybody get out there today in the backcountry? Nobody? Bet you it was a good day. You're shaking your head.
Really rough down below.
Uh-huh. Where were you in Whistler? Back? Sorry? The Duffy. Nice. It was rough, but up high was good.
That was good.
Okay. Rough, but good. Did you see any avalanche activity?
Yeah, like some small wind slams, but nothing major.
Size 1 wind?
Yeah.
Size 1 wind slams? Okay. Did you get that, Jeff? Any questions at all?
So the question that I have an appreciation comment for the quality and quantity of photo documentation.
Thank you. Fan of the photos for those at home that can't hear that.
So much well documented photo evidence.
Thank you. Any questions? Hold on.
The road that was covered at the first mine.
For the people at home.
Oh yeah, okay. The road that was covered at the first mine, how long would something like that take to clear?
That one didn't take that long. They have pretty big equipment up there. And that debris didn't set up super hard just because of where it was in the avalanche path. It was further down the avalanche path. We had an avalanche hit that road in a more direct avalanche path, so kind of top of the run out, bottom of the track where the avalanche would have been traveling very fast. And the front end loader could barely get through it. And there was trees in that one too, so that makes it a little more challenging. But yeah, big equipment makes pretty short work of that stuff. Any other questions? Okay, to wrap up. Again, is not a very sexy snowpack right now, which is nice. We haven't really been dealing with persistent weak layers for most of the season, a little bit kind of early to mid-February. Hopefully it stays that way. If you get up high enough, there is a lot of snow. Down below, not so much. It's kind of been the story of our season so far, but like I said, March is going to be epic, right, Powder Picker? He's nodding his head in agreement. Like David went through, currently right now, the forecast looks pretty reasonable for freezing levels, not so much for precip, but at least our freezing levels are looking good. This is the time of year we've already mentioned on this, start watch for solar input on south-facing slopes. The sun's starting to pack a bit more of a punch. As I've already mentioned, cornices, respect them. And right now, the best skiing is likely kind of north-facing, more sheltered slopes, out of the wind. And for me, I think that probably the elevation band you want to be in is between 1,600 and 2,200. It's someone that toured up from the Duffy. The road level's like what, Jeff? 1,300, 1,200? Yeah. So getting from the road and the Duffy up to the above 1,600 is probably not very fun travel right now. But there is a lot of winter left, and March is coming. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks so much. That was awesome. Well, on that note, we're going to all stretch our legs, grab a beverage if you have it in the back, and then we'll hear from Chris after the break. Thanks, everyone. Okay, everybody. I hope you've had a chance to have a good chat or grab a beverage. We're going to commence the second part of our evening. So hope you bought some raffle tickets. If you did, we'll be drawing the winners right after Chris's presentation. And again, if you're interested in winning a brand new snowmobile, we will be giving away in early April a brand new Polaris sled, which is pretty awesome. So up next, without further ado, is Chris Lawrence, who is an extraordinary IFMGA mountain guide with great lessons learned to share with all of us. So Chris, thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Okay, so talking about risk mitigation and decision making. So I've got a few thoughts on that that I was thinking about deeply a couple of years ago. So I decided to write them down, more of a record for my family and friends, and ended up turning it into a book about 60,000 words, which I kind of got sitting here, which I'm working on getting published at the moment. But when Gwen Milley asked me to talk tonight, the context is in lessons learned in winter. So I looked at my book and thought, well, which of my stories, right? I've got 32 mountain stories actually have sort of stories to do with winter and avalanches, which I guess is what this evening is supposed to be about. So I kind of dug into a few and realized that they're from a long time ago. And most of my stories they're not from the last 10 or 15 years. And I think that says a lot right there, that what I'm prepared to admit in terms of my mistakes and my errors and where my learning is doesn't come from the recent past. I have to reflect and whatever that word is, for many years before I can actually admit to those errors, and I'm happy to talk about it. So we're gonna dive into the past, but this first thing that I'm going to discuss is more recent. So I'm actually in France here in the French Alps in the Chamonix Mont Blanc Massif, looking down the Col de Chardonnay, and it's the first day of the Haute Route. I'm guiding the Haute Route. This was my second time guiding the Haute Route, and I've done it about 4 or 5 times since then. So this was a big decision point in the day here for many reasons. We just done our first huge climb, and on the other side of this col, we had some lunch sitting under my little bothy, which is a tarp, with my 4 clients and myself. And the wind was howling, and the forecast was this extraordinary wind event happened that day. It's called a Foehn wind. It's something very particular to the Alps. It's extreme winds over 100 kilometers an hour, and there's blowing snow, very dry, cold snow, and it's blowing and it's very cold. It's face masks, goggles, and every layer of clothing on. And everybody is turning around at this point. All the other groups are turning around, and I have to make this decision. Do I turn around and basically it's straightforward plan B, just ski down the way we came up, down the Argentière Glacier and back to Chamonix, or I keep going and I commit to going to the Cabane de Triomphe, which is further along our path here. And what I've got in front of me is a fixed rope rappel line, which is a static rope, and that's the way down. And it's a 90-meter couloir. It's about 50 degrees at the top, 40 degrees, and 45 degrees. It's very icy, and we can barely communicate. You have to basically yell in somebody's ear to talk. So these are the kind of decisions I'm faced with. Turn around. So I have to really consider my own skill set and whether I can navigate in these conditions, whether I can travel in these conditions, whether I can stay warm, and I can see what I'm doing, right? So I have to really reflect. And then it's whether my clients can do that as well, and what are their capabilities. And in this situation, I had very capable clients. Trying to move forward here. So my clients, 4 very capable people. 2 of them had been rock guides. 2 of them were involved in Squamish SAR, and I had a lot of confidence in them, in their movement skills, and their ability to look after themselves, and in their technical ability to do rope work and to travel down this fixed rope without communication and get to my anchor below, and then I would lower them over a bergschrund and we could keep going and continue roped up in glacier travel mode so that I didn't lose anybody in the poor diminishing visibility. I'm not sure who I've got to presenter mode here.
I think the slideshow ended, or like sort of exited out. So I think if we go, let's see, let me sort this out.
Yeah, if you could figure that out, that would be awesome. Thank you.
See.
So this is what the couloir looked like the year before. It was a nice day, no wind, not snowing, and you can see that fixed rope. And we ended up, I rappelled down it on this single rope and ran into a knot. Basically, that being some damage to the rope. When there's damage in a rope, you tie a knot in it, and then you've got to pass the knot. So I was able to do this. I just clipped into the knot and moved my rappel device below it and kept on rappelling. So I had to trust that my clients were able to do this as well, right? So I had that trust in them because they were climbers and experienced. And in that way, knowing my group, I could move with confidence. I knew that they could all had a bivy sack. Even if we ended up spending a night out, we could dig a snow hole and live through it, right? And we were the only team, well, there was one other team that made it to the hut that night. Everybody else had turned around. And I think these sort of knowing your group, this interpersonal stuff is super important in the decision-making process to be able to carry on and not make turnaround decisions. So this is what it actually looked like that day. That's Jim Firstbrook in the foreground here and myself behind him. You can barely see me. And it was, we just all got to the bottom of the couloir, and at that point roped up and went on compass bearing. And I think it's super important to have a whiteout plan on a piece of paper written in pencil in your pocket, like writing the rain book, because pulling out a phone in this kind of weather, it's just not going to work to use a phone app. I can stare at my compass and go on a bearing that I've already worked out the day before, and I've got a whiteout plan for the whole 7-day trip. So with these kind of go, no go decisions, right? You've got turnaround times that you have to work with, and think about, you know, how long is it going to take to accomplish your objective? You start earlier, you get the alpine start, so you can travel on the snow when it's firm in the morning, and you know you're especially in the spring, you're down and off the mountain before things are warming up. I'm going to move through to another story here. Oh, we're getting some pictures back again. Anyway, this particular day, we started over here at the top of the lifts and went through this call, and losing the thread, went through here and across to the Cabinda tree on there. So through quite a few glaciers. Actually got knocked down by the wind that day, just as I was skiing along on flat. Okay. So this story, I don't know if you guys recognize this place. I should be giving a photo credit here. I grabbed this yesterday off Google Maps, actually Google Earth, because I wanted a picture of, anyone know where this is? Grouse Mountain, yeah, the peak of Vancouver there, and you can see the wind generator on the summit there. So back in, so I took an avalanche course. My first one was 41 years ago, I just realized. So in 1986, I took my first avalanche course and took that's kind of like an AST1 and my AST2 in 87. Anyway, been doing this a few years, right? A 40-year career coming up. So I was ski patrolling here at Grouse Mountain, and it was the year after the Grouse Grind avalanche. I'd like to read that story, but it's 25 pages, so we'd be here for a while. So I'm not going to read it. But anyway, we were working on doing an avalanche control program and figuring out whether we should open this piece of terrain. So the whole backside of Grouse Mountain at the time, this face was all in a permanent closure. And there's a snowshoe road that runs across the bottom of it. I'll just show you that on Google Earth. So this snowshoe road here goes across the bottom of that slope and goes over here onto Thunderbird Ridge. So I had to sort of open that terrain for the snowshoe park each morning, right? But what I'm going to tell you a bit more about is just a small slope, which we were talking about just opening with skier compaction to stabilize it. It kind of came through here, actually through here. So I'm just going to talk about this one little piece of terrain here that I skied from here down to here. This is kind of flat, this bit with this remaining snow on it. So this is all in the name of trying to create an avalanche control program for Grouse Mountain. On this particular morning, I was excited to look at a piece of terrain that was out of bounds off the top of the peak chair. It had just stormed. Nico had suggested that we open the feature and keep it open and use skier compaction to help stabilize the slope. I was on my own, my first mistake. I performed a simple ski cut across the top of the 40-degree slope that immediately triggered a size 1.5 slab avalanche, which shot off down the slope. This was an open slope with trees on either side and ridge features rising away on both sides. I watched it go. I thought that it would be cool to ski down after it on the avalanche bed service. The slope was only about 50 meters long before it flattened out. That was my second mistake. I imagined myself a master of my domain and very much in control as I skied down right behind the churning avalanche. What I didn't realize, and where I lacked knowledge, was regarding the sympathetic triggering of an adjacent slope. I was busy wading through avi debris on the flat runout as suddenly a secondary avalanche flowed around me, burying my skis and filling up the area around me like sand in an hourglass. I was buried up to my waist. My legs and skis were cemented into the avalanche debris, holding me fast. I felt very exposed to the slopes above. If another avalanche had come down and buried me over my head, I wouldn't have been so lucky. I was so fortunate that it didn't bury me over my head, as there was no one there to dig me out. It took me quite a while to remove my pack, take out my shovel, and commence to dig out my legs and skis. It probably took half an hour. I finally retrieved my skis out of the bottom of the deep hole and skied off back towards the resort and safety. The words of Larry Stanier came to me. That was a bit too rodeo. Larry had been an examiner on an Alpine Guides exam previously. He had introduced me to the concept of cavalier cowboy loose decision-making, and I realized that I needed to tighten my grip on risk management if I wanted to survive in my chosen path. I'd been guiding Larry on my first full Alpine exam up the Huber ledges when he brought up the risks of cavalier decision-making. This is the Huber ledges. Up the Huber ledges, when he brought up the risks of cavalier decision-making, there was about a foot of dry powder covering the glacier. I decided to lower Larry down a short, steep moraine wall and onto the lower angle glacier below. I figured I would just boot ski down after him. Larry got to the end of his lower and watched me ready to boot ski down to him. Larry queried my decision to boot ski. He advised me to put boot crampons on and down climb. He figured boot skiing was too rodeo-like, that in fact there might have been slick, hard ice under the snow, and I could have gone for quite a ride. I definitely had a sinking feeling in my gut. I knew I just earned a marginal grade deduction for application of technique to terrain. So the Huber, this is not super helpful. The Huber ledges comes up from the pass above between Weewaxee Peak and Mount Huber and comes up, crosses this first little pocket glacier. And the piece of terrain I'm talking about is just a short bit of terrain onto this glacier. And then you come up this glacier and go up to the summit of Huber. Mount Victoria is over here, North Peak, and the other South Peak's the other way. Lake Louise is down the valley here. Indeed, the surface under the snow is like a skating rink beneath the cold smoke powder. It provided almost no resistance and no compaction or traction. I was a Vancouver Island mountaineer, and such light snow was completely unexpected in September. It didn't occur to me that I would need crampons for traction in 30-centimeter deep snow. That snow was sitting on dry glacier in the Appalachian zone and was simply a new snowpack generated from a summer storm hiding the bare glacier ice. Okay, this is a story about early guiding in the Waddington Range. So this is in the about 1995. I was an apprentice alpine guide working outside of my terrain guidelines, which is something that was pretty common back then because there was only 3 mountain guides on the whole west coast of Canada. Scott Lavelle, Herb Bluer, and Jim Haberl. And none of them wanted to supervise me. And the Guides Association didn't want to supervise me anyway. So I figured that I could get away with just using skis for approaches, right? The approaches are all flat in there. And then switch to climbing techniques for climbing the mountains. So the year before this story, I was actually on the Bravo route on Waddington, and this picture is taken at Mount Monday, which is in the background, and that's the mountain this story is about. So we actually flew into the Franklin Glacier on a 2-week trip. I had these 2 clients who had spent 3 months training on the outdoor leadership program at Strathcona Lodge. So I knew these guys pretty well and their capabilities. They were good skiers. I wasn't particularly. And so we're doing a 3-day side trip to Mount Monday with a little side camp. So we endeavored to climb Mount Monday as a 3-day side trip, leaving our base camp behind. May can be a month for good weather in the Coast Range, providing long periods of stable, clear weather and intensifying sun. The days are characterized by cold mornings, early starts, and very quickly becoming oppressively hot by mid-morning. Thus, we set off with an alpine pre-dawn start, out from our base camp provisioned for 3 days travel. Crossing through a high pass, I was faced with steep east-facing slopes that would catch the morning sun as we were to descend down the glacier to the ice valley below. This overhead avalanche hazard convinced me to spread out our team and go one at a time down the glacier. This is just on the approach. That's Waddington in the background. And then this is the pass that we came down. So we're already through it at this point. I'm wearing these ridiculous white long underwear, matching top and bottom to not get too hot. This was actually a thing back in the 90s. Exactly, yeah. So the overhead avalanche hazard convinced me to spread out our team and go one at a time down the glacier. The problem ensued that the skiing was horrifically challenging survival skiing, and it took an age to get to the safety of the flats below. Compounding the poor travel conditions were the primitive ski boots that I used. I had double plastic, lace-up Koflak Extreme mountaineering boots, not designed as a ski boot. I didn't actually own any ski touring boots. Kevin and Darren waited patiently above while I descended. Then subsequently, they took their turns, instantly doing a superior job to me in their specialized ski touring boots. It also helped that they were strong skiers, and I certainly was not. All the while, the first light of the dawn had long since passed, and the pink and red hues of light were assaulting the steep east aspects, presenting themselves to the light of day. I breathed a sigh of relief as the last of us joined our break spot down deep in the morning shade of the flats of the ice valley. Moments later, a slab avalanche released thousands of feet above us, triggered almost certainly by those first rays of direct solar penetration. We watched in awe as the avalanche barreled down the mountainside, covering our descent route with the debris of its passage. We survived unscathed, but were fiercely reminded of the potency of the ever-present mountain hazards that surround us. It's a little bit of a close-up of the avalanches that came down off both those aspects, just as we arrived at the bottom. I was taught a few less than subtle lessons, one of which was that the sub-zero air temperatures of an early start may have less to do with making it safer to travel than the triggering effect of direct solar action producing soft slab avalanches with the dawn's first light, especially in May when the sun is high in the sky and packs a powerful punch even at 7 a.m. in the morning. The other thing is that reducing exposure to overhead hazard may be better mitigated by spending less overall time in the terrain than spreading out and spending more time in the terrain. Meaning that if we had all just skied down the slope together, we would have been clear of the hazard a lot sooner than spacing out. As a beginner, we are taught to space out in avalanche terrain for extra caution, but this situation would be an exception. In the cold, crisp morning light, I regarded our camp location, which was pitched under the looming mass of an ice fall, which looked much closer and precariously perched in the morning light than it did in the afternoon previous. Shadow and light have a way of playing tricks on depth perception, judging steepness and distance. We had a quick breakfast and embarked on skis up towards Mount Monday. We were roped up in our team of 3 in glacier travel mode, about 12 meters apart between each of us. After several hours of uphill effort, we crested the ridge at a high col below the summit ridge. I decided to leave skis here and head to the summit roped up in glacier travel fashion and on foot. Of course, now I would have just stayed on skis and gone the whole way on skis. But back then, my comfort was on foot. We speared our skis into the slope just above the flats of the small col. In this way, they would not slide or be blown away. The tails of my skis hit a firm layer about half a meter down in the snow. I momentarily considered what the firm layer could be. A rain crust, perhaps. We ventured on with me breaking trail to the summit. It was a glorious day with incredible views of the surrounding ranges of Mount Waddington, the Tiedemann group and the Sarah group. I could see the climbing route that I'd done 2 years previously in the main summit of Wad via the Southeast Chimney route, this being my 3rd foray into this majestic range. Over the years, I have done 8 trips in the Waddington area for skiing and climbing. After a well-earned lunch, we descended back to our skis on the col below. I instructed the guys to unclip from the climbing rope and transition to skiing downhill. As we were to have the increased surface area of skis on our feet, we were thus supported on crevasse bridges, and I deemed the rope not necessary for the subsequent descent. We'd seen no significant crevasse danger on the way up, and the visibility was excellent to route find the straightforward descent to our camp. I also didn't want to coil up the 55-meter rope and carry it. It was heavy, and I figured I'd just leave it attached to my harness and tow it down the mountain while I skied. I then yanked my skis out of the snow like swords from the stone and proceeded to walk a few meters to a flatter spot to put my skis on my feet. With horror, the snow gave way beneath me, and I plunged without warning into the chasm below. This was a gigantic crevasse. A veritable blue room loomed around me and below me of seemingly infinite depths. I stemmed my fear and held back the terror that felt surely to overwhelm me, and I took stock of my situation. By way of divine intervention or dumb luck, my skis had speared into the slope on the edge of the crevasse, and I was still holding on with a powerful grip that came from a deep will to live and survive. My wrists to my elbows were in contact with the snow, and the rest of me was dangling in the air above the formidable-looking blue room that was behind and below me. Such a majestic space, with its sparkling hues of blue light, demanded attention to appreciate the awe of it. Alas, the moment passed swiftly, and a call to action surged from the future version of myself. I often talk to myself in moments of intense urgency in climbing. Get a grip, Lawrence, I muttered to myself. Then I yelled to Darren to get Darren's attention as he was the closest to me. Tie back in, I yelled, knowing that a further explanation was not required. Darren, momentarily glancing up to take stock, quickly tied a figure-8 knot in the rope that lay on the snow surface near him. He clipped in a locking carabiner to his harness belay loop, snapped in the bight of rope, then ran like hell away from me. The rope jolted tight as Darren flung himself on the snow with his ice axe engaged in the self-rest position. As I felt this comforting pressure of a tight rope on my harness, I did a dynamic chin-up using my skis to haul myself skyward. The skis held fast as my pressure on them only pressed them deeper and more firmly into the snow. This gave me confidence to apply some outward force on the skis and swing one of my legs towards the edge of the crevasse. I was able to hook my heel while exerting an immense effort and then flop onto the edge of the crevasse. This procedure is like extricating yourself from a swimming pool without the use of a ladder. Mercifully, I had escaped unscathed, but knew instantly where I had gone wrong with my snowpack assumptions. That's not the whole, but that is actually on the Franklin Glacier where we're doing some ice climbing, but it gives you an idea of the blue room. My assumptions, we were in the col, the gap in the mountain ridge that is between two high points, and the wind had accelerated through the col. The Venturi effect had removed the typically deep winter snow covering of 5 meters and left 0.5 meter of snow over glacier ice. When I'd speared my skis into the snow earlier that day, I'd hit the glacier ice, not a rain crust. Lessons in the mountains are provided with abundance. We just have to be paying attention enough to make the observation. Drawing meaningful conclusions is another thing altogether. I had made the observation of a crust, but drawn the wrong conclusion. It was my lack of experience and subsequent lack of judgment that led to this near miss of an accident. Hopefully, with my shared experience, I can prevent one of my readers from repeating my mistakes. At the time, my pride was less likely to allow me to rehash this sort of thing, but humility eventually established a platform for reflection. So there it is. It is with the passage of time that I've accepted this incident as a near-death experience. At the time, I was able to rationalize it away and compartmentalize the incident. Better not to talk about it, as it was all a bit embarrassing. Interestingly, when I texted Darren 30 years later, he had no memory or recollection of the event, but I guess he didn't have the image of that crevasse burned in memory like I did. Okay, I've got one more story here about a local event about somewhere that you probably all know. Oh, that's me towing the rope down the glacier. Okay, so Garibaldi Lake in the background. Lesser Garibaldi is the bluer one, and you can't really. And then Barrier Lake is really kind of hard to see. So this story is when I was about 17. Me and some school buddies did a little winter camping trip over the spring break, and we snowshoed up the Barrier Trail, and we're heading out to cross the first lake. The next day dawned clear and stellar, and we proceeded up to the top of the barrier, where the terrain leveled off into a chain of small lakes connected by creeks. We knew that we had to follow this watercourse to get to Garibaldi Lake. It seemed straightforward enough to cross the frozen lake, Barrier Lake, which was the smallest and final lake. The lake's outflow dove underground, reappearing halfway down the great rock wall of the barrier in the form of a waterfall. We trudged out, a gang of 5, onto the snow-covered flats and walked in a mob without formation. chatting as the strong sun warmed us. When we reached the middle of the lake, there was a great thunderous crack as the lake ice collapsed, shattering into massive puzzle pieces, bucking and heaving at angles, water surging and gurgling between the angled plates. I found myself running uphill to escape the peril of the momentarily exposed water below. Then, with a single shift, the puzzle pieces of ice settled back into their correct positions, and everything grew silent. We dropped into a crouch position to gain some semblance of stability. We were frozen in terror on our islands of ice. After a moment, we stood. It seemed like harmony was restored. We started walking fast. Nothing moved, and we were soon on the shore. We slowly realized that what had happened had been quite extraordinary. The floating winter snowpack had become suspended as the lake water below it drained, leaving a space or pocket of air. With the added weight of the 5 of us, a chain reaction occurred. We were lucky not to have slid into the water for the brief moment when it was exposed. Such lessons. How are we doing for time? I think I've gone 31 minutes already. Maybe I should ask for any questions. I could go on all night. No? All good? Okay. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. And thanks for coming. Question at the back there.
Just a quick one. What's your single most important tip for self-preservation?
Self-preservation, that's a broad topic. Just off the top of my head, I guess self-reliance, self-preservation is all about self-reliance. So just being competent with your personal movement skills, whether it's skiing or climbing and movement, and then being prepared for the worst, being a good Boy Scout, hoping for the best and expecting the worst and being ready for it.